I have covered a lot of topics over the years, but I guess that's what happens when you live long enough. But of all of the topics, I certainly would agree that the issue of money and banking and the Federal Reserve System probably is way, way at the top of the pyramid of importance, because let's face it, money is the means by which we can command the services of others, and it's neither good nor evil. Sometimes people say money is the root of all evil. I personally don't believe that. I think evil people are the root of all evil, and they will use money or any other leverage of power to accomplish their goals. Money is merely the means or the measure of the means by which we can command the services of others. And so if our goal in commanding the services of others is to help society, to help the needy, to feed the hungry, to educate the children, and whatever our goals are, we need money for that. Even the preachers who preach against money being the root of all evil will then pass the hat and ask for a donation to continue on their mission. So I'm really a defender of money, but when you think of it in that way, you realize that those who have the power to create money have the power really to command the services of other people. And in our system, the Federal Reserve System is a mechanism by which a small group of people, generally called international bankers — that's probably an imprecise word for them, but they're financial engineers. They are in the banking industry in a way, but and they're politicians, and it's a small group of them that really have their hands on the levers of power, and they are literally able to create money out of nothing. And if you just think about that, if you had the power to do that, how many people's services could you command? Well, you could command the nation's services, couldn't you? If you could create money out of nothing, and you could just by a stroke of the pen fund the politicians' most wild dreams, $1 trillion bailout here, a $2 trillion bailout there, and you were able to just create that money literally out of nothing, don't you think you'd have quite a bit of influence over those politicians? Of course, the politicians. Yeah, those politicians would be your men. And they would do whatever you wanted to do because you would allow them to look good. You would allow them to fund all of the vote-buying projects that they want. And if you were able to create money out of nothing, you would be able to walk into any general's office and say, "General, how many bombers do you need? How many nuclear submarines do you need? We'll fund it for you in one way or another." Don't you think you'd have power over the military as well? And if you were able to buy up newspapers and television stations and magazines and means of communication on the internet and so forth, wouldn't you have power over society that just boggles the mind? And that is, in fact, what exists today, and yet most people have never even thought about it, So you ask the question, what has happened since the book was published? That was back in 1994. Well, nothing really different has happened, except it's gone on and the numbers have gotten bigger. The amount of money that's been created out of nothing has become much larger than it used to be. The number of people whose loyalty and services have been purchased with it is now a much larger number than it used to be. And in my view, the process is rapidly approaching some kind of a self-termination implosion. I don't think the system can last much longer.
Well, that's certainly an interesting prospect, isn't it?
Very consistent with what we've routinely told our listeners here on the Freedom News Hour, too. It's a very common theme that you're reiterating for us today, Mr. Griffin.
Yes, it's not a happy theme, and I know people sometimes complain. They say, "Well, why don't you look at the bright side of life?" And usually say, "Okay, you start." Of course, that's a little cynical. There are a lot of good things in life, I must admit, and I enjoy them as much as possible. But when it comes to the financial meltdown and the loss of American sovereignty, and when it comes to the loss of personal liberties, being exchanged, liberties being exchanged for bailouts and stimulus programs, and if people want the government to take care of their health care and their retirement program and their education and their food and their clothing and their employment and their insurance and their housing, and if you want the government to take care of all of these for you, you have to give something in exchange, and the thing that they're giving is their freedom. So they're really voting themselves right back to the plantation, and they don't really know it.